They prey upon you. No one is safe. This world is a strange one. You guys send me so many stories, I love it, but so many of them involve your encounters with strange creatures. That's just terrifying. No matter how much we think we know of our own world, how much we explore and catalog, there are creatures that escape us, creatures and entities that are complete nightmare fuel. And it's not always some strange creature, sometimes it's creatures we are accustomed to that act bizarre and horrifying. Animals altogether are unpredictable. We have no realistic way of knowing if we will become prey or a victim within the next hour. So, I've got for you 5 more real monster scary stories. Hunting season can't come soon enough. But if you can't beat 'em, join 'em. Real professional scientist persons say that Darkness Prevails new t-shirts on sale now camouflage you against spoopy monsters of any kind. Check them out at darknessprevails.org/store. Shameless plug out of the way. Time for some scary stories. Number 1. Camping Trip Creature. Submitted by Yudi. I went camping with my family, my mother, father, and twin brother Dan, and our friend Sam, in northern Montana when I was 14. I've never told this story to anyone, and I'm not sure if I ever will. Maybe when I'm much older and it all seems like a thrilling escapade or a short tale to frighten grandkids, I'll share it with someone not online. We had arrived in late August, and it was our 3rd and last day staying out in the wild. Our tents were set up next to a small wooden dock on the water of Flathead Lake, which is a large and well-known tourist destination. We weren't on an official camping ground. My parents' friends had told us to camp here because they were locals and knew the area. We had been fishing all day, which is something I like to do whenever I'm out in the wilderness. The cold had really begun to chill us and the sun dipped down overhead. It was honestly a beautiful place. The water was as still as glass, and the sun was fiery in the late afternoon sky. My brother and my friend decided to start skipping rocks. I tried to skip them as well, but I'm not very good at it. And my brother, who has a habit of verbally attacking me over my mistakes, soon began to chastise me for my failures. I was pretty hurt that he'd do it in front of Sam, and after giving him some verbal abuse myself, I walked off into the woods like any moody teenager would do. They kept skipping rocks, which angered me even more, considering that I'd wanted attention in the first place. So I decided that I would show them. I'd put on a show and really storm off. So I did. I walked for a while, keeping sight of the shore so that I would know how to get back. I'd walked about 5 or 10 minutes when I stopped by the shore to look for any sort of small animals. I'm really interested in wildlife, and I had nothing better to do. So I spent a while just poking around and turning over the rocks. I had just noticed that the sun was going down, and being that I have a fear of the dark, I decided to suck up my pride and go back. I had just turned from the water's edge when I heard it. I can still hear it, and I can't get it out of my head. I still can't get it out of my head when I think about it. I'm not going to get much sleep tonight. It was the sound of a girl crying. I looked around for the source, and I saw a deer about 30 feet down the shore emerging from the brush. But it wasn't an ordinary deer. I saw that soon. It didn't move like one. I'm not entirely sure which way its limbs were jointed or facing because it didn't move like a deer at all. It moved in a predatory fashion, skulking, sneaking low to the ground, and I saw that its torso and legs were impossibly thin. And as I stood there, transfixed, it slowly turned its head towards me, making that crying noise the entire time. It started to walk, no, to sneak forward, and I saw with horror that its hands were clawed. I really didn't get a good look at them. I had so much adrenaline pumping through me, and all I saw were the fact that they were not hooves and looked somewhat akin to human hands before I ran. I ran back to the campsite, and that's it. Nothing happened that night, even though I stayed awake far past midnight. I've never told anyone. I didn't want to admit the story because that would make it that much more real. I don't think I'm insane, but I don't know. This isn't something I like to recall. I started off not knowing what to type, but my hands just did it instinctually. Thank you all for listening. Number 2. The Demon Goat. Submitted by Fred Durf. This story took place in the mountain ranges of Sinaloa, Mexico. This happened to my grandpa, and he says this event will always haunt him. Back in 1970, my grandpa lived in a small ranch, which is one of many surrounding the city of Culiacan, Sinaloa. These ranches are located in the mountain range miles from the city. It would take about an hour and a half to reach the ranch my grandpa lived on. His ranch had around 10 houses with around 25 people living there. The houses only consisted of one room and were fairly small, made from cement. They had aluminum roofs and 2 small windows. Living so far away from anyone else, from any help, people had to sometimes defend themselves from thieves and sometimes wild animals. So it wasn't a rare thing to see a man with a pistol strapped to his waist. My grandpa and his friends would sometimes go goat hunting to make birria, a famous soup in Mexico made from goat meat and other spices. They would always go hunting at night because this was an ideal time to hunt goats. They set off into the darkness around 11 at night. They set off in 3 groups of 2, one a spotter and the other a shooter. My grandpa and his friends would contact each other by whistling to make sure they all knew exactly where everyone else was, thus avoiding any accidents. The way they would hunt involved slightly surrounding the animal. Imagine a half circle, one group to the left, one in the middle, and one to the right. When they would spot something, they would try backing it into a corner, thus having every angle covered if the animal tried to escape. It was about 2 hours into the hunt when my grandpa and his friends spotted a goat a couple of meters away. My grandpa was the spotter at this time, and his friend was the shooter. They let out a whistle, letting the other 2 groups know that they had found what they were looking for. They started backing the goat into a corner to set up their half-circle strategy. My grandpa was the group that set up to the right of the goat. The group on the left called the shot and missed the first one. The goat started dashing to the right towards my grandpa. He started motioning the shooter and his group to get ready. My grandpa's friend shoots and hits the goat in the chest, and it starts rolling down the hill. My grandpa and his friends group up and discussed where the goat fell. The other 2 groups started walking away, saying, "You killed it, you go get it. We'll meet you back home." My grandpa and his hunting friend agreed and started off down the small hill. When they got down the hill, they could not spot the goat anywhere. My grandpa thought it was odd, but kept searching, thinking it may have crawled away. Around 10 minutes of searching went by, and just as they were about to give up and head back, they heard it. As my grandpa described it, it was a weird noise like a goat cry, but deeper and off in a way. My grandpa pulled out his flashlight and aimed it where the sound was coming from. And there, standing, was the goat on all 4s. No bullet hole, no blood, and big red eyes looking straight back at them. My grandpa's heart pounded when he registered what he was looking at. It was the same goat that his friend had shot, but it was standing up with no wounds and big red eyes. As his friend aimed the gun at this creature, now no longer a goat in my grandpa's eyes, it let out the ugliest yell my grandpa has ever heard. The once faint noise my grandpa had heard before, but now much louder. My grandpa and his friend bolted out of there. He said he had never run so fast in his life. He could hear the yells following him through the darkness. About halfway home, the noises stopped, but he still kept running. When they finally reached home after a long run, which my grandpa said felt like an eternity, the other 2 groups were startled to see my grandpa and his friend so scared and with no goat. The others started questioning my grandpa, wondering what had happened and why they didn't have the goat with them. After they explained what had happened, They thought my grandpa was joking and told him to pull out the goat wherever he was hiding it. When they finally realized they were telling the truth and saw the fear on my grandpa's face, they instantly went inside and locked all doors and windows and had all the guns loaded. They were sleepless the whole night, just waiting to hear or see anything, but nothing else happened. The next morning, they told one of their neighbors what had happened, and she turned white, stating that her father had also seen a red-eyed animal, a red-eyed cow, out in the area my grandpa had been hunting. She stated that her father believed it to be a demon taking form of animals. After hearing this story, they no longer went hunting at night. A couple of years later, my grandpa moved out of that ranch and now lives here in California. To this day, whenever we talk about hunting, he always speaks of that scary night, and he says he will never go hunting at night again. Number 3. They weren't deer. Submitted by Davy Cannonhound. So, a little backstory to the encounter is necessary. In my city, there is a relatively large nature center, large enough to hold a small herd of deer. One day, I was out there taking a walk. I'm a big nature lover, and I sometimes go there to relax. The nature center generally closes at 7 at the latest, and this was in the middle of the summer, so the sun was usually out fairly late. On the way out, I heard a noise I had never heard before. It was some sort of a cry. It was high-pitched and warbled. It wavered a little as well, making it worse. Now, generally, I do not get truly scared. It's easy to startle me, but it's hard to actually make me scared. This cry, however, woke up whatever primal instinct is left in us humans. The first thought I had was, I need to get the hell out of here. But my second thought was, wait, why? I looked back behind me towards the deeper part of the nature center where I had heard it. Of course, I didn't see anything, and I didn't hear anything else. Afterwards, I quickly walked out of the nature center, not wanting to stay in the wooded area any longer. A few days later, I was talking to a friend about what had happened. At first, I don't think he believed me, but there must have been some look in my eyes or something, because he started trying to think of what I could have heard. Screech owls can make some weird noises, and so can raccoons. But it wasn't either of those. While they were creepy, they sounded nothing like what I had heard. Eventually, we decided we wanted to check out the nature center at night. My friend got one of his friends together, and we managed to get inside. Flashlights and knives in hand, we started walking along the trails. Fairly early on, we saw 5 or 6 deer to one side of us. Not bothered, we continued on deeper. After walking more, we heard something walking on the leaves on the ground. Shining our lights through the trees, we saw deer again, around the same number from before. And we guessed that it was the same herd that we had seen. We decided to stop in place for a bit to listen for any weird sounds. But the deer never moved on, which was weird, and whenever we shined our lights in their area, we could still see their reflective eyes staring at us. Eventually, we decided to call it and started to head out. That's when we heard some noise from the other side of the path and discovered there was another herd of deer. Again, we found it odd. The nature center was a decent size, but certainly not large enough to hold that many deer. Regardless, we continued on. As we went, we realized the deer were keeping pace with us, as if they were following us. We stopped and watched both herds. I'm not sure what my friend saw, but the deer I was watching weren't acting right. They were moving their heads up and down from normal height to down where I felt their legs should be. Occasionally, one of them would take a step or two forward, bobbing its head like a dove or pigeon would. We soon decided we needed to get out, and quickly proceeded to head to the exit. The deer continued to follow us at a relaxed pace, reminding us that they were there. After exiting and driving away, we discussed what had happened. We all agreed that those things weren't deer, but questioned what else they could be, as the nature center wasn't large enough for anything but a lone coyote. Getting on Google Maps, I discovered that the nature center actually connects to the woods surrounding the Natchez Trace Parkway through a thin strip of wooded area. Something could travel from the Natchez Trace woods to the nature center, no problem. So, after that incident, I haven't been back since. Number 4. The Creepy Noise in the Woods. Submitted by Wolfpack 45. It all happened 2 weeks ago. Me, my family, including my grandparents and 2 friends, stayed in 2 cabins next to each other. My brother, let's call him James, brought his friend we'll call Anthony up to our cottage. To make it clear, my friend Katie and I stayed with my grandparents, while my brother and his friend Anthony stayed with my parents in the other cabin. We had brought my dog with us. He's a smaller dog, but barks like he's some sort of vicious guard dog, even though he's really a sucker for belly rubs. Anyway, all of us gathered into my cottage to play our last game of poker before heading home in the morning. During the game is when the odd things started to happen. My dog usually sits under the table, waiting for us to finish the game so he could get his belly rubbed. But this time, he was staring out of the window and not moving a muscle. I was the first to notice this odd behavior, so I got up and went to the window to peek out to see if I could notice anything. As my eyes adjusted to the dark, I noticed a dark figure. It wasn't uncommon to see a bear around, or maybe even a wolf or coyote, but this figure seemed smaller than a bear but larger than a wolf. My dog growled at it as it stalked around, the thing probably looking for a nightly meal. My brother noticed us and he came over. He asked what was wrong, but I shushed him and pointed to the figure. He gasped and stepped back. "What is that thing?" he asked. I replied with, "I don't know." I read and seen my fair share of creepy stories, but nothing I've read about looked like this thing. My dog jumped down, and I looked back out the window to see the thing was gone. It was after 10 p.m. and my parents, my brother, and his friend decided to go home. I told them to pick up Cooper, our dog, and watch out. They agreed, but most gave me a weird look except for my brother. When they left, I read for a little while. My grandparents and Katie had gone to bed, so it was pretty quiet. That's when the strange calls came. It sounded like a scream mixed with a cat's hiss when its tail gets stepped on. It was very terrifying, but I remained in the silence and listened. The calls came closer and closer until they were right outside of the cabin. My eyes were itching to look outside, but I just couldn't, in fear of this thing seeing me. The weird calls faded into the forest, and I finally got enough courage to hop into my bed and hoped it didn't return. Oh boy, was I wrong. The calls came again around 2 in the morning, waking both me and Katie. She looked around, trying to pinpoint where the noise was coming from. This time I was so curious, I had to look out the window. That was the worst mistake I had ever made. I will never forget what I saw that night. I peered out and saw 2 golden yellow eyes looking at me from the bushes. Its lips curled into a ferocious snarl as its eyes locked on mine. And the teeth were so terrifying. They were so sharp. Its head was massive, so big that I knew it wasn't a wolf. I backed away in a daze as Katie asked what I had seen. I couldn't say, I was so paralyzed. She was fed up and looked out the window herself. Then she turned to me, her face pale. She sat down and looked up at me. The only words she was able to say were, "It was huge." The first thing that came to my mind was werewolf. But that sounds ridiculous. Was it really that? The whole night, I didn't get any sleep. I heard the calls in the distance. It was like the thing was taunting me, by moving closer and farther away from the cabin. In the morning, me and Katie went out to the window to find paw prints as big as my feet. I was shocked. I didn't want to stay there any longer. It was a good thing we were leaving that day. As we were driving out, I swear I could see those yellow, golden eyes peering from the brush as we drove out of the campgrounds. I've been having pretty bad nightmares about those yellow eyes staring at me, and those pointy teeth, daring me to step outside, daring me to come closer. Number 5. Creature watching me from the shadows. Submitted by DB. I've always felt like something is watching me whenever I go into the woods. Across the road from my house, and about a week ago, I had a run-in with something. You see, I've never been truly afraid of these woods, but one day, when my guy friend was over, we decided to go into the woods at the gloaming, or the time just before night when everything is getting dark but isn't there yet. My parents had always avoided the woods at this time of day, and now I understand why. Anyway, we ran into the woods, careless and unaware of our surroundings. After a while of walking around in the clearing and looking at the lightning coming from the oddly colored clouds in the sky, I jumped onto his back and we started heading back towards the house. I had this weird feeling and looked over my shoulder to see if anything was there. In the shadows, I saw an outline of something. To understand this next part, you have to understand that I've always been open to seeing things that others can't. After seeing the outline of this image, an image of a black and white creature popped into my head. It was tall and hunched over with pale skin, a goat's head, no ears or tail, and a chest like a dog's. Its bones were clearly visible. I jumped off of my friend's back and walked closer to where I had seen the outline of the creature, and I got down on both knees, now sitting on my legs. I sat there for a moment and asked, "Did you see that?" He said, "Yeah, of course I did." I could tell he was just trying to make me feel better, though. I got up and started walking away. A few days later, I went across the road with my mom, who said I should take salt, which I thought was pretty dumb, but I went along with it and walked over with her. Once the area came into view, I immediately felt sick, but I didn't say anything. Once we got even closer to the area, I couldn't stand it anymore, and I backed away, saying, "I just can't do it, I'm sorry." She told me it was okay, and that we could head home, so we did. This isn't my first encounter with something I would call a creature, but it was certainly my most frightening. Just because humans are more advanced than animals doesn't mean we can read them perfectly. We don't know what they're thinking. In fact, we haven't discovered every living thing that exists. We are ignorant to our own world. But something is stalking people. Something is leaving those large tracks in the dirt. Something is lurking around your home at night. Good night. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. You can support this channel by purchasing some Darkness Prevails merchandise at darknessprevails.org/store. If you ever thought about donating to us, then buy some merchandise instead and get a dank hoodie in return. Thanks.